It's our silent movie. Narrate it. Just narrate it.
There's something about the internet that isn't working. Is that sound? No. Oh, this is a...
Is that it?
I don't know. I grew up with the internet very much evolving with me socially. And it's only been more recently that I feel like the ideas and control of the internet have drastically changed. And there's this awareness of who you are online can be found out and impact your real life.
A lot of people see the internet as like the last free frontier, but that's totally not true. We're so dependent on sort of corporate infrastructure at this point.
Infrastructure is something that's sort of designed to be ignored, and it's something that people tend to only notice when it's not working. And in some very literal physical ways and in other kind of more abstract ways, there is something about the internet as it is right now that is not working. This week, I would really like to try and figure out what that thing is and maybe figure out what to do about it. And I feel like this is a group of people who might be able to help do that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Addie Wagenknecht.
I'm Jillian York.
And we're here to talk about Deep Lab, which is a collaborative I founded in 2013 of researchers, artists, writers, engineers, curators, and cultural producers who are interested in surveillance, social hacking, and big data aggregation.
And I was just lucky enough to be invited.
Deep Lab is composed of people who are both experts in their field, but also in creating avenues so that we as a society can embrace the complexities of encryption. The idea being that I personally believe that hacking is deeply stigmatized socially. So we constantly see this image of the hacker as being someone that has a black hoodie on that's breaking into the bank, or it's a terrorist and a criminal. And it's this idea of challenging and circumventing this image to people that are visible users so that we can openly embrace it in positive ways. These complexities like PGP, VPNs, OTR, this sort of thing, Tor, I think that they're a mechanism of our culture. And since the online manifests itself now, IRL, the supreme currency is our data and our information. So if we're not fluent in these technologies and these tools in order to communicate, we cannot defend each other. Oh, I see, so we have to go.
No, I changed it.
Thanks.
These are all the women that are part of Deep Lab at the moment.
So Jillian, myself, Ingrid Burden, Allison Birch, Runa Sandvik, Maddie Varner, Claire Evans, Harlow Holmes, Jen Lowe, Julia Kagensky, Lindsay Howard, Kate Crawford, Marla, and Simone Brown. So I'm an artist, and it took me quite a long time to be okay with that because there's so many preconceived notions about what an artist can be. And more so, my friends who are hackers and programmers have always called me an artist, but my friends that are artists have always called me a hacker and a programmer. So I felt like I kind of fell into this gray area between the two. This is a piece called Asymmetric Love, which I developed in 2012. It has some CCTV cameras, and it plays with this idea of the ubiquitous surveillance, right? And this idea, especially in Europe, coming from America as an American, is something that we constantly see everywhere as a chandelier. So playing with this very common form as sort of something, as a common of oppression in Western society. I'm also really interested in atypical notions of hacking, so social hacks, gender hacks. How do you take or translate events that never actually happened, but rather is the truth of what is happening? So a lot of my works deal with contemporary issues. Optimization of parenthood is this robotic arm which reacts to a baby crying and controls the speed of the bassinet based on the speed of the child's crying. It's about kind of circumnavigating these really monotonous tasks around parenting. Also, this is Kilohydra. It's kind of a play on a black box. The black box is defined as a device which can be viewed in terms of its inputs and outputs without any knowledge of its internal workings, and the implementation is completely opaque. And so what I really wanted to translate with this piece is the idea of what a black box is, right? So I have these custom PCBs I designed and Ethernet cables on the front, and it's this very aesthetic, superficial piece, but the only person that can really see what is behind it is a person who owns it. So in that way, it's very much like a node to open source culture and the ability to hack, because that's the way you truly own something. So you reveal kind of the back door and the workings when you remove the piece from the wall.
So I don't really know what to call myself. I mean, I guess I'm an activist, a writer, a poet. But mostly what I do is, you know those people parents mostly, that try to sneak like vegetables into their children's food through creative means, for example, trying to put broccoli into chocolate? That's what I do. Not literally, but in trying to get my message across, I try to find new creative ways to do that. And so I work on a number of projects. I work for the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I helped develop our surveillance self-defense project, which launched last fall. And now I'm launching a new project called Online Censorship, which tracks corporate censorship on the internet. And ultimately, I feel like I said, I don't really know what to call myself. And so what I do is basically trying to find ways to think about the people who unthinkingly use technology and the internet and try to get them to understand the message that many of us are feeling in the audience against surveillance, against censorship, and so on and so forth. So to explain my first point, I'll share a little quick story. I do a lot of work in the Middle East, and a few years ago I was working with a number of activists in a specific country on a campaign against pornography censorship. And now, working in the Middle East against the censorship of pornography is not really a popular thing to do. But the activists in the country that I was working in were trying to find creative ways to solve this problem. And so what we decided to do together was petition the government to actually offer home censorship technology for free to parents so that they could filter at home without having everyone experience that censorship. Ultimately, it was not successful, but another government actually ended up picking up the idea. So Jordan did this a couple years ago. They offered free technology to parents to censor for their children at home, which I don't really have a problem with as long as it's not the state. And that was actually kind of an effective solution. So another big project that I've been working on, like I said, is surveillance self-defense. And what we were trying to do in developing this was find ways to reach people who aren't concerned about surveillance at all. We wanted to reach your average people, your people who might be concerned with, I don't know, for example, dick pics. And that's what really we've been working toward. We've translated it into, I think, 6 languages so far, and we're still going and still developing, and trying to find innovative ways to deliver that information. So I was thrilled to become a part of Deep Lab. Addie and I just met this morning, by the way, in person for the first time. That's the thrill of the internet, is it not? And when she invited me, I think that I kind of squealed a little bit. To be part of such an incredible group of women with such a diverse range of skills and interests. We've got technologists, policy people, artists, writers, but everybody's working toward the same goal and fighting the same fight. And unfortunately, I didn't make our first gathering. Believe it or not, there was actually a conflict between that and another really awesome feminist gathering that was happening here, and I had to choose, which is such a wonderful problem to have. But nevertheless, I didn't make it. And instead, this was the poem that I contributed to the book that we put out over the winter, and I'll be joining them in May for the next one. So, of course, I think that, this is an example. When we talk about hacking, we're not just talking about technology, right? So this was an example of something that I would call a little bit of a hack. This was just something that we put together last fall when we were upset about a meme that was going around. It was actually several years old. There was, not a big deal around it. But a friend of mine and I felt a little unrepresented by the meme. As you can see, lots of incredible, wonderful, courageous people. But we saw this and said, oh, everyone looks kind of male and kind of white. And so we created this other meme. just trying to represent a different group of people. I mean, I think when it comes down to it, a lot of the problems that we're discussing in the technology space, this is exceptional, but when you look at corporate technology spaces are usually about 70% white, 70% male, and that's a real problem. And so I think that the stuff that we're talking about, the stuff that we're hacking on, is toward that issue.
So this is an example of something that someone in the Deep Lab has been working on. Marla is an Iranian designer who's based right now out of the UK. Her work is really about data visualization, and she's been working specifically on how do you visualize the Iranian internet, especially censorship specifically in the country. A lot of her information she gathers and aggregates through either speaking with journalists, citizens, or people within the country. In Iran, it's interesting because if you're not familiar with how censorship typically works there, is it's somewhat overt. Anyone can become a dissident with just a few clicks. Internet censorship is also heavily targeted, meaning that Iranian officials tend to develop really arbitrary rules and regulations that are heavily prosecuted so that you never know what you're doing online when it will have an impact. So she did this really interesting kind of taxonomy of the visualization of how the internet works, specifically with users, with censorship, and cite by kind of specific examples.
Yeah, I mean, Iran is actually a really interesting outlier in how it conducts censorship. It's an outlier from the rest of the region, the rest of the Middle East and North Africa, in that its censorship is overt, but it's also almost something laughable in that it's easily circumvented at this point and often overbroad. The rest of the region, such as, in Saudi Arabia, you have things like chicken breast or breast cancer that are censored in an attempt to censor pornography. And so Iran's an outlier in its sophistication, and I think that what Moral's doing is really fascinating in that respect, trying to bring that to the fore. And actually, I'll just give a little quick pitch for a talk tomorrow. Masa Al-Medani is giving a fantastic talk about Iranian internet censorship that you should all see.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with this project, I do recommend checking it out. She did a really comprehensive data visualization project, which is quite astounding. So next up is Harlow Holmes, who's a mobile security expert with the Guardian project. She was the lead developer on the InformaCam app, which is enabling encryption of media in real time on your mobile device. What's great about this is it can basically be used as potential evidence or even a trusted source for journalists. So for example, in Syria recently, there was a place where much of the mobile video was pretty extensively used for documentation of war crimes, but it was also heavily used for propaganda. So with InformaCam, people on the ground can basically encrypt any sort of media to secondary sources and use it as evidence or in fact-based reporting. And what I really like about Harlow's work is a lot of her work is as much about enabling as it is about protecting the user. So Ingrid, she had a lot of really good projects, and it's very hard for me to pick. She has some really amazing, I don't even know where to start with Ingrid. Anyways, this is a map she created in 2014 based off of the GCHQ and how it collaborates within submarine cables with specific companies. So for this, you'll see it's the Apollo cable, who the owner is, Vitaphone, and then which companies basically there's implications for. So if you're on Verizon or Vodafone, I can't see from here, but you can read it. She also recently did this project which is called Networks of New York. And it's a book which is sort of a taxonomy of infrastructure in Manhattan. It helps you navigate visually how the city works. So it explains what certain code markings are, which are typically kind of like encrypted, or typically placed for things like telephones, TV, internet markings, or even surveillance cams and where they're placed within the city. There's also Runa, who's doing a lot of really interesting work as a security researcher. She advocates and teaches journalists how to use encryption technologies for secure communication between themselves and whistleblowers. She's also a technical advisor for the TrueCrypt Audit Project and consults.
Say that again. It's okay.
And for the Freedom of Press Foundation.
So I'm sure most of you are familiar with Secure Drop looking at this audience, but nevertheless, in case you weren't, it was the leaking platform designed originally as Dead Drop by the late Aaron Swartz and then later picked up by the Freedom of the Press Foundation. And to me, what's really important about this is that we have we have a variety of different ways for leaking information, that we have all of these different platforms. And I think that, it's a personal decision where one chooses to leak to, and having that kind of choice is incredible. And having so many diverse people working on this is also incredible.
So I love that we're just going to own that. Go back.
We're going to own that.
It's cool.
We're going to own it. We're just going to leave it up there.
So if there was a video here, Allison Birch, proprietary technologies, people. If there was a video here, Allison Birch recently created a mic jammer, which is a piece of hardware which creates a frequency to basically block your smartphone. So it's similar to putting a piece of tape over your, what do you call this, iCam?
Your camera.
Your cam. It's about protecting people and from self-censorship in an age of constant surveillance. To use it, you basically put your phone next to it. It creates a frequency automatically, and you can speak freely. Something that Allison said about her work, which I think also applies a lot to kind of the overall precipice of Deep Lab, is something I would like to read really quickly. She said, "The goal is to focus on the tools that are usable and not geared toward people who have any technological knowledge per se. Too often, the most usable products are the most exploitative, and the most secure programs are next to impossible to figure out."
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Which, as you know, if you're familiar with encryption, unfortunately still holds true for a lot of the protocols and software that we're working with.
So I wrote a piece for the New International a few months ago, or New Internationalist rather, sorry, a few months ago about the colonization of the global internet by Silicon Valley. And the idea behind this was about how so many of the policies that we encounter on the corporate web come from specific American ideas about sex and violence, and that a lot of these ideas specifically are coming from that statistic, the 70% men statistic. And that's why I believe that Facebook's policies, for example, mirror the same kinds of policies that we see from the Motion Picture Association of America, etc. It might not be overt, it might not be intentional, but as any American in the audience knows, our priorities around sex and violence are a bit fucked up. And so I believe that a part of the reason for these policies is precisely that, the demographics that make up Silicon Valley companies. Now again, some of you might not care about Facebook or Twitter, you might have completely rejected those, and that's fine, and that's a wonderful ideal, but I can't. And so we're not in the US right now, but I still can say that globally the problem is the same. Technology companies, especially the corporate space, are dominated by men, and in diverse countries by white men. And so some might say that that shouldn't matter, but it does matter. We all come to our work with a diverse set of ideas, shaped by who we are, how we've been raised, and what we've been through. And it's plain to say that women's experiences are different. And so that's what I love about Deep Lab, and I love about these different initiatives that are coming up, is the idea that we can rethink these ideas, take it back to scratch, take it back to the bottom, and rethink through the policy and the technology ideas that we've grown up with or experienced.
So Ethan touched a little bit on this in his keynote, but I think it's important that we're at a time for humanity to acknowledge the structural inequalities that have been built up over the last century in favor of these white male voices. I think once we have acknowledged that, we can see how the system has overlooked much of the population for too long already. I don't think that this is just about women. As a society, we are broken, and if we do not welcome more perspectives into the conversation, nothing will change. What I mean by perspectives is I mean women, I mean LGBT, I mean women and people and men and everything underneath that are not white. Let us talk, and when we speak, listen. We can change the trajectory, but only if we can look up from the blown out white windows of our screen to listen instead of tweet, then we might be getting somewhere. Thanks. So I think we have some time for questions. If there's any from the audience, we're happy to.
We definitely have a little bit of time for questions. Do you want to give me a sign of hands for questions?
Hi, that's a really cool group of women you've assembled there. How did you find each other in the first place?
That's for you.
So I was approached by a friend who's also a director. His name's Golan Levin. He runs the Frank Wright Studio for Creative Inquiry at Carnegie Mellon. And he said, I really like what you've been doing with your kind of surveillance art. Is there something that you could do as a fellow here that would pertain to this? And so I thought about it for a while, and I thought, what would be cool is to bring together kind of the strongest, most literate women I know in these fields and see what's possible. And so that was really the precipice for Deep Lab. And I brought forward a list of women, and there were some suggestions from people who are advisors, and then from there we met, and the rest has kind of been developing history.
More questions? How overrun are you with the requests of people wanting to join that fabulous team of women?
Can I? So it's been interesting because there was actually I'm going to talk about this. Is that okay? You're cool with it? Okay. So there was actually quite a bit of criticism a few months ago. The lack of trans women, the lack of women of color. And I think that from my perspective as an individual and as a part of the collective, I felt that it was really valid criticism. Now, there haven't been, as far as I know, people knocking them down the door to join, but the criticism, which came from a man for all, whatever, disclosure, but I still felt that it was really valid. And I think that, we have a channel, we talk every day, and we've talked about being more inclusive. We're actively trying right now to make this more inclusive, because I do think if you look at us, we are a pretty white group. And so for us to stand up here as two white women and go like, oh, too many white people in this space is a problem. And so even though there's no banging down the door just yet, we do welcome any suggestions that you have.
Okay, and you're reaching out to particular channels or platforms. I mean, you're connected with Global Voices and a number of other potential channels to reach out to women across the world. Are you focusing on anything particular?
So in a few weeks in New York City, we're going to be doing a lot of speed workshops for setting up encryption and getting yourself running with really basic kind of knowledge of getting Tor on, getting OTR running, getting PGP keys set up, and just feeling I think it's important that people feel like they can be proactive and be enabled in that situation. So we're doing that. There's been people also reaching out to us who are wanting to set up kind of satellite communities.
Okay, I'm going to look around a last time. And if not, you're both going to be around for a little bit, right?
Yes.
So more questions can be addressed to you personally after the session. Wonderful. Let's give another really, really big round of applause to Addie and Jillian. Please continue.